Yo, what's going on, everybody? Today, I'm going to get a chance to sit down with Rory Linkletter. This man has been on absolute fire since just last December. He's set PBs in the marathon, the half marathon, where he happened to have set the Canadian national record as well. And he also set a PB in the 3K. He's got a lot of races coming up for this year as well. So it's going to be an exciting time for this man who is currently unsponsored, but I can't imagine that that's going to be the case for very much longer. We had a great time talking about his past races, his future races, and a lot of other fun stuff along the way. So I hope you guys enjoy this conversation with Rory Linkletter. Yo, Rory, what's going on? Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy day to sit down and talk with me. Very excited. I know my viewers are going to be really excited to hear from you. How's it going today?
It's going well. I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to chat all things running and whatever else we get into here.
Very cool. Very cool. I mean, I know you've been a really busy guy. You must be exhausted. You've been racing like crazy over the last, I think, couple of months now. Let's kind of start talking about it backwards. Let's start with, was it last weekend you were down in Louisville?
Yeah, I was in Louisville this past weekend at the American Track League event.
Yeah, right. And you ran the 3K, which is not an event that I would normally think of when I'm thinking about what you're going to be running. Tell me about how you got into the 3K and then how you ultimately ended up getting the win.
Yeah, so I wasn't intending to run any indoor track coming into this season, I guess you can say, this year, but coming off Houston, things were clicking really well. I was just kind of getting excited about where things were with my fitness. And I watched the Milrose games and was like, oh, I need to run an indoor track race. Even if it doesn't go great, like I just want to try something. So I gave Coach Ryan Hall a call and tried to talk him into it. And it didn't take much convincing. He just said, don't have any big expectations. We haven't done a ton of track specific stuff. We've been getting ready for your Houston half that you just ran. So we threw in like a couple 1,500 meter 3K specific sessions in the last 2 weeks. And they actually went really well. And then we went from like a don't expect anything to like, wow, this might actually go pretty well mentality. And I got out there, was fortunate enough to have the American record holder in the 1K, Shane Strike, pacing me through 2K with my former college teammate Abe Alvarado and his current teammate at Atlanta Track Club. And so I had a great pace set up where I got to determine the pace. I got to just go out and follow these guys, speedy dudes that the pace felt easy for them. And they got me all the way to 2/3 through the race. And then I just had to get competitive with myself as I had kind of broken away from the field at that point, and just run as hard as I can to try to get under that coveted 750 barrier, which is the world indoor standard. And I had like some goal of running 747 just because that would give me a shot at world indoors, because that's what the second fastest Canadian time is at this moment. Okay. But didn't end up getting that, but still considered a huge win just to get under 750, run a 5-second personal best, and just kind of out of nowhere throw a track race on the schedule and have it go really well and feel really good during it.
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty amazing that you were able to pull off a 3K PB after coming off of your Houston half marathon performance. But then at the same time, like I saw your workout on Sweat Elite. It looked really good out there. That was in between Houston and the last 3K. Is that right?
Yeah, that was the Monday before. So I had just raced a mile the Friday before and then came back that Monday I just had to squeeze in as much work as I could to make the pace feel normal for me. Sure. So yeah, that was the Monday before a Saturday race.
That's very, very close in terms of when the workout is to when the race is. Is that I'm sensing a theme from you that you don't really like to taper all that much before your races?
Generally speaking, I've never been a huge fan of the taper. Okay. I like to train through things, although like my volume is pretty low lately. So it's not like I was like running in there on really super tired legs. Coming off Houston, I took a down week where I just did like pretty moderate running and like 1 run a day. And then I did like, I guess 3 weeks of not a ton of volume, but, some track specific stuff. and then jumped in this race. So I haven't really had a time to build coming off Houston. So the volume's been pretty low. So I'd say even though I didn't, taper for it, I had fresh legs in the sense that like in the point of training I'm in, I'm not doing a ton of volume.
Yeah, I mean, though, but like how fresh could your legs really be when you just set the Canadian half marathon record like a month ago? Like it was like 4 weeks ago or something like that, right?
Yeah. So with that race, I didn't feel entirely fresh going into that or coming out of it. Mm-hmm. Obviously that was a big run, but like I said, we took a down week after, and I'm one of those people that can probably bounce back and get like that energy, that fire back really quickly. It was actually my call to take a down week. And by the end of the week, I was like, oh, I really want to train hard again.
Okay.
Put me back into some hard workouts. Mm-hmm. So it was like me knowing my body coming off that half and like the stress that went into going into that race, knowing I needed to take it back a step if I was going to keep pushing, later into this winter and spring. I got to just be really smart and like listen to the body when it tells you, hey, take a week down, keep the volume down, all those things.
And so how much of a discussion is there between you and your new coach, Ryan Hall, about like, how much racing that you can handle versus how much you want to do? Like, can you give us a little bit of insight into what that dynamic is in terms of you guys deciding what to race?
Yeah. So I started working with Ryan shortly after CIM, which was my last race with Northern Arizona Elite. And I had told him, even though I just ran a marathon, I was in my head going into that marathon, eyes were on Houston. I knew that it was going to be a good opportunity to chase that Canadian half record, one that I had coveted for a couple of years now at this point. And I knew Ben Flanagan, fellow Canadian, was going for it. And I didn't want to let him go for it and not at least be in the race to give it a fair shake. I didn't want him to get the record without me in the race trying to get it as well. So that was a big part of it. And Ryan was like, sure, if you feel like you're in a place coming off CIM that you can, gear up for a half, then yeah, let's go for it. And that training actually went perfect. Like I was pushing the limits harder than I ever had before. And I was hitting everything and felt really good up until 2 weeks before where I got COVID. And then that was like a big scare, but it ended up working out really well where like I was able to recover fully before the race and like get a negative test and everything. But other than that, everything went perfect coming off CIM going into Houston. And then coming off of Houston, I watched Melrose games and got excited and asked to run a 3K. So it's so far it's been like I ask, Ryan finds a way to make it work with our training. And he jokes that I never give him enough time to actually plan out a block. So far, it's just been like mini segments of like, oh, we got to get ready for a half. Oh, we got to get ready for a 3K. Now we're getting ready for another half. But he was admitting that it was a good thing for me to touch on the speed coming off the half and the full that I did this fall. So I think it's all been like kind of, it seems spontaneous, but it's served the big picture as well. So it's been good that way.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I'd be one thing to say like, all right, well, so you got it out of your system. You ran like 2 marathons in like a 1.5 month period or 2 month period, and then a half marathon and then a 3K. But I just saw today that you're going to be in the elite field for Atlanta for the half marathon down there. And that's coming up in like 2 weeks, something like that. It's right around the corner.
Yeah, it's right around the corner. It's next weekend. Okay. And I had committed to that one well before I decided to do the 3K. Okay. So the plan was all along, these things, they don't pop up that quickly normally. Usually, especially with road races, you like to plan way out in advance. So I knew I was running Atlanta probably in the new year / going into this new year. So I had that race circled. I looked at it as an opportunity to compete with at the front of a race. I thought it would be more low key than it is. Then I looked at the entries as they came out. I was like, okay, I guess I'm racing a couple sub 60 guys. So it's not exactly what I signed up for, but that's okay. You got to roll with the punches, and I'm excited to race. A guy, I think one of the guys in the field was second at Berlin. So I mean, it's going to be a good race. Yeah. I mean, it's a serious field, but also it looks like they're putting up some money to have someone break the course record for both the men and the women. So
it looks like it's drawn the right kind of attention when there's, I think, 2 sub 60 guys, a guy that's run exactly 60, and then there's I think one other person seated right ahead of you, and like someone coming in like you at a 61:08 as the 5th seed is pretty incredible lineup for a half marathon in Atlanta.
Yeah, and Atlanta Track Club is a world-class organization. They've put on some really good events in the past. I was at the marathon trials watching my teammates at NAZ Elite at the time compete, and it was an awesome atmosphere, and they did an amazing job hosting the trials. And then they hosted this event last year, although on a different course due to the pandemic. They used like a speedway instead of closing down the actual streets and letting a mass participation thing happen. But I saw this race last year and I was like, oh, like this is a good time of year to run a half. Like, I'd love to, run the course similar to what the trials was. And it looks to me, looking at the course map, that it at least runs in the same area as the trials was. So it's going to be hilly. It's going to be, a dynamic race, which is what I was looking for. I wanted to, not coming off Houston, run a half where I could just focus on racing and not, worry about trying to set a record in time.
Yeah, because I mean, I was there to watch the trials as well, and I remember 2 things very distinctly. It was incredibly hilly and incredibly windy and cold. And I mean, it's the same time of year, so there's a likelihood, I guess, that you could have you could have it be very more similar than I think maybe you want on your race day.
Yeah, I was looking ahead. It looks like it might be the opposite problem. It might be like 75 degrees and humid. Okay. So we'll see. I mean, that's like me looking 10 days out, like just, put Atlanta on your weather app on your phone and just see what it is. But it could switch. It's far enough out that anything can happen. So we'll see what happens on race day. I hope it's not that cold, but I also hope it's not 75 and humid. Yeah. I haven't really been training in that.
What excites you more, a flat and fast time trial type of race, or one that's going to be tactical where, time is going to be important because there's that bounty out there for the course record, but, you're really going to try to race for the win on this one? Yeah,
so for me, it's where are you at in your training? Okay. And naturally, I would say I prefer to race. I've always been someone who feels like if I can smell blood in the last third of the race, I'm the kind of guy that really comes alive in those moments. Okay. But I have gotten better at least on the roads, just time trialing. Houston's gone well for me twice. The half marathon distance is like one that I feel super comfortable with. So I would say for that race, it might be the only one where I don't mind time trialing it because but if I go on the track and I'm running a 5K or 10K all out time trial, I'd way rather be in a championship 10K or a championship 5K because that race hurts from the gun and it's just like all you can focus on is splits and the guy in front of you and you're in a single file line. Whereas road racing, it's a little bit more dynamic and you can actually distract yourself even when you are time trialing.
Yeah, really cool. Let's go. Speaking of the half marathon, can we go back to Houston for a minute? And you're there, Ben Flanagan's there. You're both making the Canadian record attempt. Is there conversation beforehand? Is it like icy cold? Is it like fist bump? Is it like, cordial, like good luck to you? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I have a lot of respect for Ben Flanagan for a number of reasons. He's obviously had a pretty amazing career thus far as a professional, especially on the roads. You look at what he's done at Falmouth twice and Manchester this Thanksgiving. I mean, those are impressive wins. And so I knew when he was in the race that like, if I wasn't at my best, I was very vulnerable. So a lot of respect for him. He was more public about his attempt on the record. And I was told by coach to keep it close to the vest. We knew I was in the shape to do it, but it wasn't something that we wanted to broadcast just because Ryan having gone after records himself and Sarah having a record day that day as well. He just felt like the best thing to ensure the best race is to keep the pressure off, just make it about running your race and don't worry about it. If you run the record, let them talk about it after kind of thing. But Ben, is actually a coworker of mine in my like out of running world. So I work for a startup company in Canada called Streamline Athletes, which is a college recruiting platform for anyone in cross country or track and field looking for a Division 1, Division 2 NAI, any collegiate opportunity. So he's my boss actually in this role. So
is your like performance review coming up next week then?
No. He's really fun to work with. But so we have a professional relationship in that aspect. We have a competitive relationship, and then I consider him a friend. So it was really cordial. We did a shakeout the day before. There was I felt a little bit of tension because I felt like I had to prove myself because I was the underdog in this matchup. I'd say if there were betting odds on us, he would have been a strong favorite because he had just had a better year coming off of 2021. But I knew deep down that I had a shot. So that's all I could do is just race on that day.
Very cool. Very cool. And then did you guys have a discussion afterwards?
We cooled down together. He was a classy guy. I have a lot of respect for him. Like I said, he congratulated me, even though you could tell, like, you know, in ways it bummed him out because that was supposed to be his moment, or at least he had intended it to be his moment. And he was very good about it. It was like, hey man, congrats. That's awesome that you got it. I'm glad one of us got it. He had a very, very level head on his shoulders, and we cooled down together. And I was obviously like beaming, having run the race of my life, and he's like a little bit less beaming. So, but he did run a good race. I mean, 61:38 is nothing to shake a fist at. So I think he's going to be a guy that if I'm not on my game every year going forward, that record is in jeopardy. So I have to always be, you know, aware that the next time he runs a half marathon, he's going to have a good shot at challenging that. So it's going to be fun pushing each other in the half and hopefully the full if he steps up in the next year or two, which I think he might. So
all right,
that'll be fun.
Now, speaking of stepping up, I know something that you've been kind of talking about, you wish you would see more people do, is step up to the marathon early in their careers if that's something that they're interested in. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I've been on record saying like, it's hard for me to say because I don't think you have to decide between track and marathon. Obviously, I just ran a track race. Right. I plan on running more track races this spring. But I think that there's a lot of guys that are running exclusively track races that could be both, could have the best of both worlds, could be amazing marathoners and develop that experience at a young age, which I think will help them become even better later in life. But that's the debate on whether or not it hurts speed development and all those things. And it's just, you have to weigh what makes the most sense for you. But I look at a guy like Connor Mance coming out of the NCAA and I think marathoner immediately. And I think he thinks that too. Right. But I also look at a guy like Joe Klecker, who just made an Olympic team in the 10,000. And I think the day he decides to be a marathoner, he might be the best in the US. So I just see him as like someone who looks like he could just grind and has an aerobic engine. So I look forward to seeing guys that are currently tearing it up on the track that are young, see how early they might switch to the roads, because I think that the roads are really fun. And just generally the US, their best athletes stay on the track, I think, just a touch too long.
Yeah, I mean, for someone like me that loves to run half marathons and marathons myself, you know, very different level than you guys, but I enjoy running them. I enjoy watching them. You know, I'm excited when I hear about athletes that are thinking about making the switch or jumping up to that marathon distance. I always feel like it's super exciting because that just seems like that part of the sport from a fan's perspective is easier for me to follow. And so it's just I think I enjoy it more, and that like always gets me excited when it's like, oh, this person that's really good at the 5K or the 10K, or I talked to Sydney Gidabudai a little while ago and he's talking about it and I'm like, all right, there we go. That's the kind of thing that gets me really excited too.
Yeah, Sydney will be really good at the marathon. He's just one of the smoothest runners I've ever seen. He's still really good at the track as well, and he's proven he's pretty good at the half marathon and shorter road races. But when he steps up, he's going to be electric. And clearly, Roots Running is doing a very good job of developing marathoners at this moment. So as soon as he does, I'll be anxiously awaiting that debut.
Yeah. And you guys went head to head at Houston, and you mentioned earlier that when you smell blood in the water, it gets you super excited late in the race. How far ahead did you see Sydney at the finish line? Did that get you excited?
So I was in the group that ultimately ended up being like the winning pack all the way up until about 9 miles, maybe 15K. And I had like a spell of, I don't know, stomach issues. I felt like I was going to puke for like just a minute or two, and I lost contact. And me and Fable were running side by side, and we could see this pack kind of dwindling before our eyes in the later stages of the race. Maybe 2 miles to go, I could see Sydney was the first guy to fall off, and the guy that was coming back to us. I didn't think necessarily, hey, we're going to go get him. I was focused on, hey, I'm on record pace. I need to just be as aggressive as I can over these last mile and a half, 2 miles. And it wasn't until probably 600 to go that I thought maybe I could get Sydney. And I really wasn't even focused on it. I was just focusing on keeping my form and pushing as hard as I could to the line to get every second. I didn't know what the clock was going to read when I saw it. But once I saw the clock and I had like 300 meters to go, I for some reason can always find like a burst once I can see the finish. So I threw in my little burst, and I think I passed Sydney with like 75 to 100 meters to go. Maybe.
Yeah, I think you just squeaked by him at the end. I don't know if he saw you or knew you were coming, because it's at the end when there's like just like a lot of people all over the place at that. And then there's also that weird like kind of like dog leg to the right. I think it's to the right when you come in. So
yeah,
kind of like hides you maybe a little bit.
The finish line sneaks up on you. If it wasn't for the 1K to go clock or 20K clock, you wouldn't know you were coming on the finish line. It's having run Houston, I did know that it was coming up, so I started like building that momentum into that. But the first time I ran Houston, I remember like having way too much in the last 200 meters because I couldn't see the finish until then.
Yeah, I mean, I ran the marathon there a couple of years ago. It was my only time running in Houston. And it's like deceptive though, because all of a sudden you start seeing the chute and there's the fencing and there's like all these spectators everywhere, and you think you're almost done. And then it's like, no, this is a really long road. And then it just keeps going and going. And then it just like turns and like, oh, here's the finish. I'm done.
Yeah. The road races that have finishes that are deceptively far away are my least favorite. I'd much rather have one that sneaks up on you.
Okay. Very good. That's awesome. Now, I've heard that after the race, you cooled down with Ben Flanagan. I've heard that you had to pretty much go right to the airport after Houston. Not a lot of time to celebrate.
Yep, correct.
You basically, like, your coach got you like enchiladas and like a burrito on the way to the airport?
Yep. He sent me on my way at the hotel restaurant, and I took it on the bus to the airport, and I ate like an enchilada on the bus, which is like the rudest thing you can do on a bus full of people, is eat something that smells as strong as like Mexican food. But you got to put in that food. You got to fuel the engine post race.
What would your ideal post race food be? Like if you weren't rushing to catch a flight, like what would you pick?
I mean, after a good race like that, the first thing you want to do is like, if it's a marathon, I'm like Bloody Marys.
Okay,
it's
nice.
Really funny. Like that's like the move. Like I've traditionally always started my post marathon celebration with a Bloody Mary. It's every single race.
That's a really great choice. It's got all your salts.
It's like a meal. A meal.
Yeah. And you're rehydrating.
Yep.
I think I'm going to start using that. That's a really good choice.
It's a good one, and it's a great way to kick off like a post-race party because you can eat with it. It's tasty. It's not strong, Yeah. I love Bloody Marys, and then it's usually just grazing throughout the day depending on how your stomach feels. And I'm usually, if it's a marathon, I'm usually done for a while, so it's a more of a celebratory stuff. But with Houston, it was like, I know I'm getting back to work here soon, so it's just like, find me food, I'm good.
Right. Now after CIM you came in second. You got to finish it with your training partner and your buddy, and then but what I understand is towards the end of that race you vomited a bunch of times.
Yeah, so it was pretty bad. I was racing Nick all the way up until I guess 2K to go was probably where I was like, okay, I'm going to try to win this race now, or win this race within the race, obviously.
Right.
And so I threw in maybe like a hard 2 minutes, and I definitely sped up a ton. And we were in downtown Sacramento. You have windows on both sides of you because buildings, and I could look in my reflection and see that I gapped Nick by quite a bit.
Okay.
But I'm still, on the gas. I don't know what time I'm going to run. I'm trying to get every little ounce out of my body as possible. But I guess I had just accelerated too aggressively at that stage in the race, and it just started to come like this like nauseating feeling coming up my my stomach and into my chest, and it just kept moving up the chain, and it was bad. I was like, I'm gonna throw up, and then as soon as you think that, you do. Like it won't go away. So until I started throwing up, and I was still trying to, like, I was like, Nick's right behind me. I just dropped him like a minute ago. If I'm like projectile vomiting, like he's gonna
get on his shoes.
Yeah. And he's gonna be able to close this gap on me that I just worked so hard to create. So I'm running scared at that point, and I kind of just have to take a deep breath, gather myself, and then I was able to kick again, and I was good. But it was like a very scary moment where I thought I was gonna have made this awesome move and moved into second place, and then blow it all up with just like this stomach issue that I'd never really had in a race before. But that was actually similar to what I experienced at Houston. Like I was saying, when I felt like I was going to throw up, it was a weird feeling. I had surged super hard to cover a move, and then all of a sudden I got this nauseating feeling. But this time I didn't actually puke. I just had to like kind of settle in again. Well, I guess I've learned this in long races: don't accelerate so aggressively at like the hardest point of the race, or else it'll provoke like an acid reflux type reaction from me.
Okay. All right. So you're vomiting mid-stride, still coming up with the second place finish, a PB for you, right?
2-second PB in the marathon.
Nice. And you got to take the PBs where you can.
Yep.
2-second PB, you get it. Is this Bloody Mary time for you after all that vomiting, or you need to settle your stomach, or what did you eat after the race?
I definitely had a Bloody Mary,
Nice.
But it took me a while to get there. Because, when the race goes well, it takes you a lot longer to get back to the hotel than if a race goes poorly. At Boston, I was in my room in like 45 seconds. And so like at that point, you're like jumping in the shower as quick as you can. You get on normal clothes and you're like, all right, I'm going to go try to forget this race. But when you have a good race, it tends to be more standing around, fist bumping your competitors, like joyous moments. I had an award ceremony, so it had taken hours, and I think we had a hospitality right near the finish. So I tried to put like anything in me. I think I had like potatoes, because I was like, some sort of starchy carb will settle my stomach. And it didn't feel bad or anything. I just think I freaked out my stomach in that moment. I wasn't feeling any sort of distress before that moment. It was just like a really like acute thing. So all
right. Well, I mean, it's not at least it wasn't something that kind of like slowed you down, interfered, distracted you from the race. It just seems like it was kind of like a easy come, easy go, like really quick, and then it was done. Yeah,
it was like a 20 to 30 second moment in the race where I was afraid like I was going to like be petering the last 400 meters of the race and get sniped by Nick for second.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you got to lose to somebody, I mean, at least it would have been a friend of yours,
Yes. If I could lose to anybody, it would be him, for sure. He's my preferred person to defeat me.
Okay. Awesome. Let's shift gears and talk about Atlanta coming up in 2 weekends now. What do you have any time goals for a course like this, or like what's kind of the mentality going in, to the extent that you want to kind of put that out there? I don't know how many of your competitors would be listening to this, but any thoughts you want to share?
Yeah. So I can't share details about why I chose this race, but there's a race coming up shortly after this race, that this race is going to be like a dress rehearsal for me. Okay. So I'm treating it like I'm obviously going to race as hard as I can, but in my mind, it's preparation for another race to come. So, and that'll be probably announced in the next several weeks as well. So Atlanta to me is about racing with that mentality that I want to take into my next race. and it won't be about time. But I do want to be aggressive. So I think there's a chance that the time is quick, because I don't think I'll gain as much out of the experience if I'm not at least being an aggressive racer. So we mentioned the field that's assembled. We've got a guy in there, I think with a 59.17 or something personal best, a guy that was second at Berlin. My guess is at some point there's going to be a real tough decision to be made. And my plan will probably be to make that decision without hesitation. Go with whatever it is, no matter how fast, no matter how early, just match it and see how the body responds. And I feel like I'm in a good enough place in training and my confidence that I can do that and know like the world isn't going to come crumbling down later. And I'm fit enough where, even if this move is aggressive and I can't maintain it all the way to the finish line, I can weather the storm for long enough and recoup later. So that's kind of my mindset. It's more about the mentality of how I'm going to approach the race than it is a time or a place. I'd love to be in it to win it for as long as I can. And that's more the mentality than anything, is just stay in the race as long as possible.
Very cool. I love the way that you're breaking down these races from everything from the marathon distance down to the 3K. And it's fascinating to get that kind of insight from you on that. Now you've done basically every distance that there is available in the last 2 months or 3 months of this year so far. Is there a marathon I don't know, you probably can't announce it if there is, but are you thinking marathon later in the year at some point?
Yeah, I can say that I will do a marathon in 2022. It's just a matter of which and when.
Sure.
My ultimate goal would be to run Eugene for the marathon, which currently, based on world rankings, I would be selected for Canada, but that's subject to other people bumping me off the list, or from my country or from others, because I think I'm currently ranked somewhere in the 80s, and 100 get selected. I'm third for Canada. So if one Canadian bumped me back, or if 15 people or 16 people or whatever it is from other countries decided to leapfrog me, then I could be bumped out of the criteria. But if the criteria holds, which I'm hopeful it will, I would do Eugene, and that would be a huge opportunity for me. I mean, a World Championships, it's huge. So that would be awesome. And that's kind of goal A. Goal B would be pivot to a fall marathon if Eugene doesn't happen. And if that's the case, then it's, I've kind of feel like I've troubleshooted a lot of my marathon issues over the last couple of years. And I feel like I'm ready for a big jump breakthrough. So I'll probably be swinging for the fences in my next one, and having it be outside of the qualifying window for the Olympics. If it was a fall marathon, I really could go for broke and not really worry about if you fall apart, you don't get X standard.
Sure.
Yeah. I feel like I could take some risks. So I would probably prepare for a race where I could take those risks.
Wow, that's exciting to hear. I mean, you've got kind of time on your side in a way, being outside the window. So exciting. I'm really excited to see what you're going to do.
It's going to be fun.
Very cool. For Atlanta, you're currently unsponsored. What shoes are you going to be running in for Atlanta?
Yeah, so I just bought a fresh pair of, I hate showing my cards like this, but I'll be transparent because not that I think I'm worried about my competitors know what I'm wearing, but for sponsorship sake. But I love just the transparency side of the sport. So I'll just be honest. I'm going to wear Nike Alpha Flies. So far in my experimenting, that's the shoe that I feel makes me run the fastest with the least amount of effort. That's as simple as I can make it. And I've really liked it in training. And when I ran Houston, I wore the Next Percents because in my head, I was like, that's what everyone wears for the half. But since I've done more workouts in the Alphas and the Next, for me and my stride, I feel like I actually probably cost myself a chunk of time because I feel so much more efficient and the pace comes so much easier in an Alpha Fly for me.
Wow, fascinating. Because I remember a lot of people back at the marathon trials were debating, because that was the week where the Alpha Flies kind of first, not came out, but Nike did that thing where they basically gave everyone a pair.
Yeah.
And people were like, I don't know if it's going to work on this Atlanta course. I mean, it ended up working just fine for Galen. But
on the men's team, everybody that made the team was wearing them. So
yeah. Is that right?
Jake Riley was second and Abdi was third, and they were all wearing Alpha Flies.
Abdi wasn't in Next Percents? I thought. Oh, okay.
So
yeah. Well, there you go. Well, you got the data. You've got the data behind it. So it does well in Atlanta. Then makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So for me, that was another factor in it. I was like, oh, I'm running in Atlanta. What did people run well in Atlanta? And so that's part of it, but not really the full piece. Is just like I've been trying a lot of things, and I like a lot of things, but I just think right now this is the safest bet for me.
Mm-hmm. Now, I just saw you tweeted today that in the last 2 months that you've spent $2,000 on shoes.
Yes.
That's a lot of money on shoes.
Yeah.
Can you give us a quick rundown of some of the highlights?
Yeah. So obviously, as someone who is in a unsponsored phase, I wanted to get my hands on things that I haven't tried and to kind of understand the super shoe landscape quickly. So I knew, hey, everybody that's unsponsored seems to be wearing the Next Percent. So I got to get a pair of those. Right. Bought 2 for safe measure.
Okay,
and then I was like, well, I got to try an Alpha Fly. I got to see if it works for me, because that's one of those things that it seems like it's one of those shoes that either you're a responder to it or you're not. So I was like, got to try one of those. And then when I decided, like, hey, I know I'm going to run track at some point this year, I got to get a Dragonfly. Those seem to be the craze. So there's my racing corner. Okay. And I also got a pair of Saucony Endorphin Pro 2s or Speed 2s. The names slip me, but I've really liked that shoe for like long runs and tempo efforts as well. I didn't pay for this pair. I got a friend that plugged me with this one, so I didn't count this in my tally, by the way. Okay. But I got a pair of Asics Meta Skies, Meta Speed Sky. These names blow my mind every time, but I love those shoes. I really do. Yeah. They're really doing it for me. If I had a fresh pair, I would consider racing in those as well. But then I've gotten 2 pairs of Adidas trainers just to try them, a Boston, a Supernova. And then I've gotten 2 pairs of New Balance trainers just because I'd never tried New Balance before. Okay. So I was like, let's try it. And so I bought, I think, a Fuel Cell Rebel or Fuel Cell something. And then I got a 1080, which so far has been like my new favorite mileage shoe I've ever worn. It's like it fits like a sock on the upper, and it's super soft. So that's the shoe breakdown that I've purchased, which I threw in the Asics just to share that little detail, which I didn't buy. I have a buddy that runs for Asics. And
all right. Well, so. I mean, Sarah Hall is an Asics athlete. Ryan, I don't know if he's still in some way sponsored by Asics or not, but he was throughout his career. So I when I saw you running in them in that Sweat Elite video, I'm like, oh, I mean, like, does Ryan just be like, here, I got a trunk full of these, you can try them on? Or
Ryan,
I didn't know how that got to you.
He hasn't given me anything other than those enchiladas. So no, he has not given me any shoes. I haven't asked. I don't like asking for handouts in that sense. So I'm a little prideful for that. If he offered, I'd be like, yeah, give me a pair of Asics, please. But no, nobody's offered. So I haven't gotten any freebies other than the pair that my buddy Nico actually gave me. Shout out to Nico. He runs for Asics. So I was telling him like, hey, I've wanted to try those. And then he was like, oh, I've got a pair that I've only worn once. Let me hand them to you. We're the same size. So it worked out perfectly. I've found that some brands, now that I'm trying different things, fit very differently for different sizes. So I've been in Hoka's for obviously 2.5 years. I ran in Nikes at BYU, but I also worked at Run Specialty for 5 years throughout college and my senior year of high school. And I've tried almost everything, I feel like. So I feel like I'm in a good spot to pick, if I could be selective for my shoes for now. I have a good wealth of knowledge. And then also, if I can find a sponsor, there wouldn't be a shoe out there that I haven't at least tried something. So I'm open to a lot of things, but
yeah, I mean, that 1080, that's really great for just eating up all of those like everyday miles.
Yep.
And that Fuel Cell Rebel, how are you using that shoe?
I've been using it for like doubles and like up tempo long runs kind of things. So that one, it hasn't I didn't love it as much as 1080. 1080 is like, obviously I told you, is like my new favorite easy run shoe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been a critic of some things, so as well. It's been fun. And I have a list of shoes that if money wasn't a thing, and if I was just like, oh, I want to try all the shoes, I would go online and spend another probably $5,000 right now just to try everything. But
it's a great time to be a runner. There's so many fun options out there.
Yeah,
I've been telling people this for years, but it's like there's so many great shoes out right now.
Yeah, I really want to try Pumas, but I haven't had a chance, and I keep looking at them fondly and be like, ugh, but had to prioritize my purchases lately.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're hard to come by. Even if you were trying to actively go out and buy them, it's like, a lot of time they're sold out. I think the new version 2s of everything are coming out soon, but and I don't think till like the end of this month. So I was looking on the website too. I was like, are these shoes out yet? I've been seeing videos. I've been seeing reviews.
Yeah,
I haven't been able to get them either.
Yeah, Puma was the sponsor of the American Track League, the entire thing. Right, but this weekend they had like all these pop-ups and everything, and everyone was wearing Puma, and I was like, "Ooh, Puma looks nice. I could wear some Puma." So that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's just until I can find like a narrowed down search of a shoe sponsor, I'm going to be as creative with my testing as possible.
Well, that's very cool. It's very cool that you're open and trying so many different things, and just to be able to get your take on it from like a pro's perspective is very insightful for me as well. Yeah,
and a lot of people were asking on that tweet about the money I've spent. I always post on Strava. Obviously, I'm a big Strava guy, and people are like, "What shoes did you buy?" I was like, "Well, if you look at my Instagram and my Strava, you could probably piece together every shoe I've worn. It's not like I'm being secretive, cropping them out of photos or anything, or not post. Like when I post an easy run on Strava, I always change which shoe I'm wearing so I can track the mileage on them. So that's something that anyone who's ever curious about what I'm wearing, it's not like I'm hiding it. So I'm pretty open to sharing that. I don't want to like broadcast on the internet like, just bought a brand new pair of X company's shoes, because like I'm also in a business point trying to find my next deal. So
right. So yeah, I mean that's it. It's got to be a difficult kind of like line to kind of navigate a little bit.
Yeah.
You want to experiment, but you don't want people to be like, oh, well, he's running in all these shoes now. It must be because they're talking.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm open to talks, but it takes a long time in this world. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully I don't have to run unsponsored for too much longer. Otherwise my bank account will start to suffer from purchasing all these shoes.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine it's going to take you much longer. I mean, it's easy for me to be really confident about it sitting over here, but I mean, with some of the performances you're putting in and the trajectory that you're hitting, and I don't know, I see good things for you.
Thanks. Just send that off to every sports marketing director, head of performance at all these major companies, and if you give me the stamp of approval, maybe they'll sign some checks.
I don't know if I can give bumps like that, but to the extent that I can, I'll do anything I can help you out.
Wow.
But I mean, you're doing your part too. I mean, in terms of marketing yourself. I mean, you're out there, you're on Strava, you're interacting with people. You've got your own podcast as well. You're part of like the new crop of like pro athletes. Is that something that's intentional, or you just love being in this space and it's coming naturally to you?
Both intentional and natural. So I've learned a lot more about how to be intentional and natural with it and be authentic. I think in the past it was just like always race pictures, hype captions. I'm trying to be more like calculated with what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to share some sort of insight, not just be clickbaity. And I also want to contribute and just interact with the community of track and field, marathoning, road racing. I even like following like the ultra world, just anything in our sport I just really enjoy. So for me, it's like, if I can contribute something, I'll try. If I'm just observing and applauding, that's also sometimes what I'll do.
Yeah, I mean, because it seems like you're pretty active in social, which I know for some of the pros that are out there that are maybe more, I don't want to say older, but maybe are from the older school, are like, we'll keep our mouths shut and let the results do the talking. But I feel like in 2022, I mean, there's like a handful of people in the world that can get by with that. Otherwise you got to kind of be part of the community a little bit more.
Yeah. If I was running 26 flat, maybe I'd consider deleting my Instagram and Twitter and just focusing on running, because I'd be cashing checks in other ways. But I am a business person in some ways, and I realize I'm not a world record holder. I'm just trying to add to the community and add value to myself and future sponsors. If someone's going to pay me money to run for them down the road, like, I want them to feel like they're getting something out of it, and they're, by attaching their name to mine, it's mutually beneficial, not just a one-way street.
Yeah, I mean, that just makes complete sense. Complete sense to me. A couple of things before we wrap up for today. We talked a little bit about your coach, and one of the things I'm wondering is, has he and this comes to mind because you've run such a variety of races in just kind of like the last 60 or 90 days. Has your coach Ryan Hall ever challenged you to do the deadlift mile, like the 500-pound deadlift and then a sub-5 mile?
Well, I couldn't move a 500-pound bar, so I don't think he'll challenge me with that. But he does like to talk about potential challenges that are really obscure at practice. Like, we'll be warming up or cooling down, and he'll talk about how he's training for a 100-pound weight vest mile, and he wants like us, our group of guys that we train with, to try running with the 100-pound weight vest just to see what it's like. Or like, we were at the NAU track the other day, and he just grabbed there was like a sled there with like a 45-pound plate on it. And he was like, time me running this 100. And then he was like, he ran 100 pulling a sled as fast as he could. So, I mean, he's all about those weird, obscure fitness challenges, but I think he's smart enough to know, like, he doesn't want me to get hurt trying to do something ridiculous.
Okay, I have one more kind of like ridiculous challenge mile question for you. I know you're a dad. I hear the baby in the background. Love to hear it. I also noticed that, at least looking back at your Twitter, that you are aware of what the stroller mile record is. Have you given any thought to an attempt? I mean, you got to do it when the baby's young.
Yeah. So when that came out, I like quote tweeted it like on a whim and was like, should I? Yeah. Because I did create somewhat of a reputation for myself in college for doing the blue jean mile.
Right.
And I was like, this is like free publicity in a lot of ways. And like I said, I am somewhat of a businessman, and like the amount of traction something like that gets is awesome. I think, I think more people should do weird things to prove it's fun. There's no stress involved. It's just something like, hey, how fast? It's like one of those things you talk about on a long run with your buddies. You're like, hey, how fast do you think you could run a mile in Converse or something, right? Like, you could just throw out any challenge, and rarely do people do it. I would love to do this stroller challenge just for fun. I also talk about breaking 4 with my dog at the Santa Barbara like dog mile world championships, because my dog runs with me a lot and could definitely break 4. I would be the limiting factor there.
Right. So what kind of dog can keep up with you?
I have 2 dogs that run with me. I have a miniature pincher that it can go about.
A min pin can keep up with you?
Oh, this dog is an elite athlete. Well, like, no problem keep up with me. And then I have a Catahoula leopard dog, which is like a hunting dog. And that dog, I actually think could beat me in any race up to like probably 50 miles, where like the inability to sweat would be the limiting factor for this dog. And it's really incredible. So I actually ran 8.5 miles with that dog this morning, and just unfazed, like absolutely zero fatigue, sprinting back and forth on the dirt roads while I'm running 7-minute pace, and just no fatigue after the fact. It's not like she comes home and like conks out. She might take a nap, but she's ready. She could double with me later in the day and be fine.
That's amazing. That's got to be a lot of fun for you too. Some other training partners.
Yeah. I don't mind it. She's still pretty young. She's just over a year old, so it's a training stimulus for her, and it's pretty good. It's fun. Very,
very cool. I think that's all I have for you today. Before we go, though, the last thing is how can we best support you right now? So, like, everyone that's listening and watching, we'll have links to your socials down in the description. But what else can we do to best support Rory?
I'll just plug our podcast shamelessly, just because that's something that Nick Hogger, former NAZ Elite teammate, current NAZ Elite member, we started this podcast, I guess 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago now. we're doing our 70th episode on Friday. We interview some interesting guests. We have fun with it. It's something that is starting to get a little bit more traction. We had our first sponsor, shout out Stoke Performance Nut Butter. And that's one cool thing. I'm always saying, follow me on Strava, follow me on Instagram. You can follow me on all the social medias, whatever you want to do. But no, I'd say listen to the podcast. It's fun. And we have a very exciting guest this week that I'm excited about. So you'll have to stay tuned for that one.
Well, I'm excited to hear it. I listened to the episode with Connor Mance, and I thought that was a really great conversation, really great insight into, someone that coming out of college already having great success on the roads, and one of those guys where you're like, I can't wait till he runs a marathon. It's going to be super exciting. So it was a good episode for sure. I enjoyed the podcast.
He'll be electric. So I've been racing him since he was a freshman in high school. So it's really fun. Very
cool. Well, thanks so much for your time. Good luck in Atlanta and for the rest of the year. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of you in this year, throughout the year.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Fun to be on here, and hopefully we'll talk again sometime.
Thanks so much, Rory, for spending the time to sit down with me today and letting all of us know a little bit more about you and some of the great stuff that you've got coming up for the future. Everybody, don't forget to go and check out the Running Rivals podcast. That's the podcast that Rory does with his friend Nick. I've already been listening to this podcast for a little while, and I can vouch that if you enjoy this conversation, that you're going to enjoy the Running Rivals podcast as well. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?